So, what did I actually spend on this car and on fixing it is the question I've gotten basically most of the time whenever I posted a video or anyone asked me, like, okay, it was cheap, but how cheap was it? The answer to that is, well, the car itself. I bought this, as you saw in the first video, for 1,550 euros. So, in my opinion, well, as it is already the cheapest car I could find on Mobile, Autoscout, or anywhere really that was not crashed or not like a British car that has yet to be imported and taxed and all that good stuff. So this thing, 1,550 euros, basically as it sits, because, well, what did I spend on fixing it? Like this part here, the roof part. Well, honestly, less than 100 euros? 70 to 80 euros, maybe 100. I'll put it up on the screen, the exact numbers for the parts I needed. The parts I actually really needed was the little plastic clips I mentioned before, these like €9 clips that hold this panel in place with a sensor attached to it. I basically needed a new trunk lock to be able to do this. And what else did I need? I needed hydraulic oil, that was 15 euros. I needed, well, I actually think that's it. Time, patience, help from Orhan, the nice gentleman that came by with his laptop and VCDS to run it through the mechanical bits just to make sure it's actually working, and give me some tips what needs to go where. But yeah, all in all, the roof didn't work because the sensors were misplaced in the trunk. And I'll get into the details of that in another video, or in another part of the video. But yeah, the sensors were misplaced, so there was just a mechanical fix. Put oil into the hydraulic pump because rumor has it they don't like running dry, and it didn't. So oil, plastic clips, put it all back together correctly, and we have a car, a convertible, a running driving VW Eos for around about, at this point, just shy of 2,000 euros. I think I spent about 1,980 and something. Again, I'll put it up on the screen. In total, that includes all the material that I needed for things I didn't have to do. Like the interior trim around the windshield here in black. I bought a switch for the roof, the actual switch in the center console, because this one doesn't look nice, plus I suspected it might be broken. It wasn't. 15 euros down the drain if you want. I bought a PDC sensor, assuming it was dead, which I never needed. And yeah, I bought a lot of clips for the door panels, screws and stuff. I'll put a list of all the things on the screen. And in the end, it came up to less than 2,000 euros as the car sits right here, right now, which is, well, still by far the cheapest Eos in Germany. And that's not even just clickbait. That is literally what it was. It was the cheapest running driving car that only had a roof problem, and now it's the cheapest running driving one that doesn't have a roof problem. And just in case you don't believe me, obviously I drove it here, so the gearbox problem was fixed. It was briefly terrifying, but aside from that, we do also have a working roof to this day. Not just once, not just twice, it actually works, and we've used it a couple of times and it works every time so far. So I'm honestly quite happy with my investment of roughly 2,000 euros for a running, driving VW Eos with not that many miles on it. So yeah, this is it. 2,000 euros. It's not completely done yet. I still have to do some little things. I still have to swap the light cluster on the inside that is still grey instead of black. What else do we have? There's some squeaks and rattles. I think the door panel in the front here needs some padding or something. It's rattling, squeaking, rubbing. As I pointed out in a quite early video, the swap roof has hail damage. So on here, on this metal piece, is a lot of little things and damages. It has scratches on the roof, it has scratches on the car, it has peeling clear coat on the door and the rear bumper. The rear bumper also was impaled by something at some point. God knows how that happened. But on the plus side, it still only has 160,000 kilometers on it, so less than 100,000 miles for the American people. Or whoever else likes imperial units. Decent tires on it. It's mechanically sound, suspension seems fine, brakes are fine, it doesn't need anything immediately, it seems. It still has inspection until October. I hope it will pass new inspection again once that rolls around. And one thing maintenance-wise I will look into is timing belt. I was told it was done, but let's face it, I don't take anyone's word for something like a timing belt on an interference engine, because that is... I don't trust that guy that much, let's face it. I mean, he left this car in the state he left it in, so I'm not taking his word for that. I'm gonna have a look, I'm gonna take the cover off, see what's going on, and then either do it or don't do it, but there's a good chance there's a timing belt job in the not too distant future. And yeah, other than that, Germany's cheapest Eos, 2,000 euros. Can't complain, can I? So what was actually wrong with this car, with the roof specifically, that led the previous owner, the seller of this car, to ripping it all apart and selling it on rather cheap to me? Well, realistically, not much, as I said. First of all, the original roof had the problem that the sunroof didn't work. The sunroof, though, is actually not that terribly hard to replace. He decided replacing the entire roof is easier. So he did that, replaced the entire roof, ripped it all out. He even went as far as thought ahead, and when he put the new roof on, he put a different harness in it, because it was a facelift roof with a different harness. A facelift roof has one more sensor. So he figured he's going to be smart. He's going to add the roof from the facelift with the harness from the facelift. And kind of that's also where he went wrong. Because what he didn't do right is put those sensors in the right place. The car has a handful of sensors, one each in the front here, telling the roof whether it's locked and in position or not when it's closed. There's sensors in the rear window, in the frame of the rear window. There's sensors on these flaps that tell the car that the trunk is open, because these flaps have a cable, as we saw in a previous video, attached to the trunk. Which means when the trunk pops back, these open up, both sides. And then the critical sensor in this case is the entire roof package. When it goes into the trunk, it has, in the pre-facelift, one sensor, and that is on the hinge of the entire roof mechanism. That tells the car when the roof is actually in the trunk, so it can lower the trunk lid back forward again. The facelift has two sensors, not just one but two. And no, it is not just on this hinge and on that hinge, because that would be reasonable, sensible, to be expected. That's what the previous owner expected, because that's roughly where those two sensors were when I got the car. Remember, HS8 and HS13 were roughly somewhere in there in the trunk flying around. No, those sensors moved with the facelift. HS8 is in the pre-facelift on the hinge. On the facelift, it moved onto the side panel, right down there, and the hinge just lowers down on top of it. HS13, mirror image of the side. problem with that? He didn't put it there. So the roof would basically, initially, completely open, and then the trunk would be stuck open like that. And then it would stop with a system error roof mechanism. And that's where he probably started ripping it apart. Because at that point, he started ripping apart the trunk area, the pump, the trunk lid itself. He took out this cladding, he removed and broke the lock, because maybe he thought that had something to do with that. It didn't, by the way. And then he proceeded to take these hooks off that latch on here when the car is actually lowering the boot lid backwards, because this holds it on, otherwise it would pivot around. And all of these things he tried to no avail. Then he obviously, as we saw previously, ripped this panel out with a hinge on it, and it has a sensor on it. So at that point he removed another sensor attached to the boot lid that didn't really help his case, because he just broke it more practically. And by ripping apart the lock to the point where it only worked sometimes, well, the roof mechanism checks this first, because the first thing it does is unlock the trunk so it can actually open the boot lid. Because if this is locked, it can't tilt back, obviously. So he broke that, creating a problem. He ripped this out, creating a problem. All of that just because he didn't put those two sensors here and here, but down here on the hinge. And he could have just avoided that. Also, bonus, he put the facelift harness in with the second sensor, but he left the original roof ECU in, which doesn't know about the second sensor, so it didn't look for it. It doesn't look for it. The sensors, I put it somewhere out in the corner, aside, it's zip-tied it away. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't need to be there, it doesn't do anything, so he didn't have to bother with that. He didn't help him. But yeah, let me show you exactly where those sensors used to be and are now. So, as you can see, the roof is lowered into the trunk, and when that happens with a roof opening mechanism, the trunk lid is going to be swung backwards. And then it is waiting for this package to lower down, and the sensor 8 and 13, or in this case just 8, to tell it, hey, is it roof down or not? And that sensor used to be down here on the mechanism, on the hinge on the side, in the pre-facelift, in the original roof. With the new roof, the facelift roof, in this case a 2010 roof, that is right down there, right under here, under this carpet. I stuck it down there because that's exactly where it is. On the bottom of the hinge is like a little counter magnet that is supposed to trigger that sensor. And that's basically all I had to do. I had to put the sensor there, so the roof would actually realize when it's down in the open or in the final store position. And since he didn't do that, he didn't get it to that point, which is then why he obviously started ripping out the trunk lock and ripping out that panel over here to no avail. So he basically had one problem he didn't know about, and then he caused another series of problems just because he didn't know about the first problem. So now you know the long story of what did it cost me and what was wrong with it. And to sum it up, again, one flap, which I could have gotten cheaper on eBay actually if I had found one with all the clips and type. Those are like 20-25 euros on eBay. Would have even been cheaper. The trunk lock, I mean, I seem to have fixed it in the end, but I'd rather just put a new one in because I spent 12 euros, no, 10 euros and 30 cents on a used trunk lock out of an Audi and some hydraulic oil. Put it all back together, and most importantly, place that one sensor where it belongs, which the previous owner didn't do, which is why I have a 2,000 euro VW Eos working, functioning. Still to be done is maintenance. Just have a look at what does it need, what needs to be done, just like oil changes, brakes and stuff. Although at a glance everything looks fine, but I'm probably gonna take the wheels off, look at the suspension and everything that I can't just see by crawling under it, and I'm probably gonna do a timing belt because I don't like to take somebody's word for it. and then I hope it gets new inspection in, what is it, October, and then it will probably stay right here in the driveway and replace that Audi back there as a daily driver. It kind of already did for Kelly, so I think it might stick around for a little bit. We'll see, but you never know. We might also keep the Audi and sell this one, but or maybe just keep both. I mean, keep all the cars, you know? But the next video you're gonna see is not about this car, or that car, or this one, but about a different car. So stick around for that, and see you next week.